Hey, and welcome to a wonderful episode of Chopping It Up. This is where I bring most dope people in the soccer, football community, the world, and we just have a nice little chat. If you have Patreon $6 tier, you can enjoy this full episode. But for people who, you just watching this on YouTube, listening to it on the podcast devices, you'll get a nice, tasty 15, 16, 17, 18 minutes. Sometimes I change it up. Sometimes I'll give you 15 on a dot. Sometimes I'm like, hey, I was a little wordy at the beginning, so I'm going to give you 18. But you enjoy that, inspires you to subscribe to our $6 tier of Patreon, where you can get plenty of episodes, our Breaking Bread, our match preview series, Chopping It Up, our interview series, and plenty more starting next month. Pay attention to those things. But today, it's a nice conversation with a fellow citizen, nice and blue in the house. It's been a while since we've had him on, so plenty to check up on. I love the way that he sees the game. If you follow him on Twitter, you probably shout out to Sky Blue Times, follow them on Twitter, that they will point you in the right direction. And if you want to dabble more into a way to see how Man City plays, I was trying to figure out how to phrase that, check them out on 9320 Pod. Love those people over there. Great people. A nice medley of personalities who see the game differently and give you tons of content of all sorts. Shady Gang, please give it up for Bailey. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me on. I think the last time I came on, the first thing I said was just how nice the intro was. So it's nice to get that for the second time around. And as you mentioned in there, I had the pleasure of working with some really good people at 9320, doing podcasts with them, right about covering City with Sky Blue Times. Just as you said, kind of pointing out things with data, whether it's videos, GIFs, making annotations, talking about tactics and all that sort of stuff, and just trying to contribute to all the other wonderful creators that we have in City Space as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I think you do a great job at it. We'll talk about a lot of bit about City. Not a little bit, a lot of bit about City. But we're going to start with you. How did you fall in love with football?
Well, I like to kind of just analyze the game really simply, and I carry the same thing through to me when it comes to playing football, really. And that was just a way to get involved with playing down a part of my friends, and that's the way into it, really. Like, everybody had to support a team, was interested in covering football, following football in some sort of way, and that was my way into it. Was just going down a park, playing with my friends, playing different kind of games that we did play down a park, and then from there I just slowly got more and more into kind of following football myself. My dad's side of the family was all United fans, and I definitely didn't want any part of that. I'll tell you that. So I very correctly chose to support Manchester City, and obviously you could see over the last decade I made the right choice there.
Most definitely did. Oh, yeah, because what, 15, 16 players they're sitting at now? Yuck. Could not imagine. Gross. And yes, I know City relegated, blah, blah, blah. But that's the best. That's the best, which you can never forget about. Because you have to tiptoe that line of like recognizing it, but trying to accept the current, because you can't forget how you are. And I feel like City fans, especially the older ones, whenever they feel that you are, I guess, appreciating the success too much, they're like, but you got to remember when we were losing. And it's like, yeah, bro, we know. Like, relax a little bit and be in the now. Enjoy the success. Like, we will never hit these heights again. Well, I doubt we will hit these heights again. But also, like, we gotta be, especially now that we are now on the downhill of it. I feel like we really need to try to enjoy these moments and really speak the gospel of how successful City were over these last few years. And even one thing that Pep said, he's like, people come up to me and they always go, Pep, what happened? Pep, What happened? And I say, no, what has happened? What has happened? And they're just like, talk your shit, Pep. That like pumped me up. I was just like, okay, fat, little spicy. I like that. And that's where I think, at least for the rest of the season, that's kind of where we need to be. A game like Newcastle, I guess, will push us towards that, seeing the team as calm, cool, and collective as they had in, it feels, all season, or at least since Rodri was injured.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that press conference got you pumped up, definitely got me pumped up. Just seeing the way the Pep's talking about 100 points. Oh, Liverpool can't do that anymore, can they? But we have done that. It just made me wonder if he's got that on his mind looking towards next season. And I think because there's been loads of takes that you see online about people kind of wondering if City are coming to the end of their era, whether Pep is kind of not feeling it and so forth. And I think when you look back at last season, you realise that he had a year left on his deal. That was running down. It was looking like, hey, Edison, will you do one more year for me? De Bruyne, Bernardo, will you do one more year for me? And then now it's kind of completely flipped where Pep's like, no, I'm rebuilding Manchester City now and I'm here to stay. It's just changed that dynamic completely. So even the leaks to Verts that we saw that were going around online today, last year that was, well, why would he come if Pep's on the way out? Whereas now it's Pep phoning up saying, I want you to be one of the main players in my new City side. So a lot has changed around City, definitely with Pep, and I think with his attitude, with the kind of like losses that we've had, poor performances, the players that have, quite frankly, probably let him down on a kind of personal note that he really trusted, and has delivered for him before. I think names are pretty obvious on on that front, but I think that would have really reinvigorated him and give him that kind of energy. And I've always said that when Pep leaves, it will be because there is no competition, because he's accomplished everything and everything's good at the moment, rather than him leaving because he's can't figure it out and he's struggling and everything's falling apart there. That's the kind of situation that he'd thrive from, the kind of like problems to solve.
No, that's spot on. Especially because he's staying because he's saying he's staying because he didn't want to leave the club in such a bad place, which also would have hurt, I guess. Or maybe it would have helped his legacy if he left and this team was just completely fell off after that. Does that mean that he was extra dominant, or did he just run the team to the ground? It'd be interesting. You know, let's not even talk about the what ifs, but let's continue this conversation. What is something that you think is overrated about football?
I think I'm probably going to take this in more of a kind of like general direction, I think, from reading your question. So overrated, I would say, is how complex people try and make football seem. So especially with what I do online, whether it's writing newsletters and the posts that I do, it's just trying to make things more simple, and that carries through to just a graphic with a few different lines that people can just easily see what's going on there. Whether that's the comps that you see people do, just highlighting the specific single actions, the little kind of details, and all the way through to just the words you use and not trying to like overcomplicate things. And that's something that I wouldn't say I'm the best in the world at, but it's something I'm trying to improve at. And when you look at the game that we just played against Newcastle, and you're looking at the goal that Edison provides the assist for, it really quite simply is that Newcastle can't put pressure on the ball because City outnumber them, and Edison then has the space to then step forward and make that pass. And then you look at Marmoush and Haaland, it's Haaland pulling one player down deeper with him as the centre back Dan Burn follows him, and then it's Trippier having to come all the way across from the left flank all the way through to the middle. That is made it a nightmare for him to trap Marmoush, and Marmoush has that space to attack. So it's just kind of really making it quite simple, and that same thing kind of follows through to, you look at the way Newcastle tried to press us and they couldn't really do that, and they were just kind of outnumbered in every single situation. There was just always a player that could drop in. Rico Lewis was always moving somebody away. Sabinho was coming back down the flank, and it's just trying to make it simple rather than all the kind of like complexities you see and people doing like, you know, thousands of words on a thread, when really it's just, you look at it, City how Newcastle outnumbered in every situation.
No, I'm with you. That has kind of been something that I realized, especially us moving so heavily to Blue Sky, and then I went back to the other app like a month later, and it was very interesting to see like which accounts have kind of taken up the space where some of the other people have left, and some of the new people who popping up and how they see the game. It's all been very interesting, and I will say, and obviously I feel like that also kind of feeds the app where sometimes people try to make themselves seem smarter than need be. But yeah, there have been some threads where I'm like, this is too much. It's making my brain hurt. Like I don't understand anything any more or less reading this. And so I do appreciate minimalism, get straight to the point. You can because even on a completely opposite, I am a big believer that the truth is more entertaining than anything you can make up. And that's half the reason why I try not to make too many incendiary comments. Or if I do, I just pick one narrative and I run with it. And mine for the last, since Arsenal drew at the Etihad last season, I was like, if Arteta misses out in another year, maybe even 2, he's got to leave, right? That was mainly to annoy people, but also I kind of mean that. It's like, how long can he be second, especially in this modern style of football? Everyone keeps talking about Wenger, but it's like they got Wenger out of here, and the game hasn't even like progressed. People weren't even as impatient as they are now. Like, people want like already Amarim's getting the Amarim out chance, and it's like, bro, the team is just not good, especially for how he wants to play. It's just very interesting evolution of the game and how people ingest it.
I'd just say on me saying with Arteta is probably a good example, really, because he gave Arsenal fans at the time something that they could see and hold on to and think, okay, we're going somewhere, there is progress that's going to be made, we can see where the problems are and the way those are going to shift. And Amarim, on the other side of that, has not really given United fans that. It's more around their kind of criticisms of the club, the ownership, and the players that they already are unhappy with. But on the pitch, you're not looking and going, okay, we can see where the progress is. Really, you're looking at a guy that struggled in a few different games with the kind of setup and player selection there. And then on the other side, you're looking at an ownership that is not going to be able to possibly plug those holes in the near term with their financial issues. So it's just a very tough situation. But Arteta really was, for a lot of people, a real kind of blueprint of this was the project manager kind of trend that we've seen play out. But then also you go to present day, as you just mentioned, and you're in the US, so you'll see loads of other sports over there as well, where that I know from a lot of the time that I follow ice hockey, like the cycles are very, very short. There's more like 2-3 years. And even in the NHL, like somebody can have a spectacular year and nail everything, but it's so hard to kind of sustain that roster. And then when you take that to football and you just ask the question, how many times can you come second before it bothers you mentally? As good as you can be as a professional and as a team, like to keep coming up short, it's very hard to go to that well. And we saw with the period where we were going head to head with Liverpool that even though that they missed out plenty of times against us, they did win that Champions League. They got to the final, then won that. They did then win the Premier League after that. So even though there were times that they missed out against City and pushed us very, very close, they did still have those trophies that they knew they could get over the line, that they had something there that this team can deliver. And that gave them something to work towards, that when you had the 21-22, when they did really come back and they got close to us again, they had something to work towards because they knew they were already good enough and can do that. They just needed to move around a couple of pieces. So I think, go back to what you said about Arteta, that will be one to watch in the summer. Kind of makes me wonder, like, did they not invest because maybe they're going to wait to the summer and see how does Arteta do for another year? I don't know. And then the other thing is, I don't know if you've looked into their kind of like contract situation and all that, but they've got a lot of players that are probably coming towards the end that could be moving on. You look at Zinchenko, he's probably got to be sold. You've got two, I think the 2 centre-backs are coming into 2 years left in the summer. You've got, they'll have 2 years left this summer, I believe. Obviously, Real Madrid is the kind of like obvious connection for Saliba. So you've got that kind of situation there. You've got Jesus that's got an ACL, so you can't sell him in the summer, even though you would have liked to.
Yes.
So that makes it harder to kind of bring in a striker now, doesn't it? You've got that Tomiyasu who's out injured, or it seemed like he's just had a gap year basically, and they give him a credit card and said go have fun. But he's apparently got surgery, so to come up for his knee. So you think that's similar to Jesus in a way that can't kind of offload an injured player in the summer if he's still recovering through that. So you're locked on there. But then you've also got these really promising players coming through on the academy. So it must be a kind of like hard situation to judge what you do, because you could twist and you could decide to get rid of Arteta. And I think Slot and Hansi Flick have been good examples that there are coaches out there that can come in and do a good job.
Good point.
But you could do that, and it could go the other way. So it really is a tough situation. But that kind of brings me back to City, in which case, with the rebuild and everything kind of going on, there's a lot of situations with Arsenal. You look at Liverpool with their contracts and stuff like that. You look at Chelsea, really kind of up and down, don't look like they're going to really nail it. Newcastle really hinges on doing good business, but they still be fresh to a title race. You look at the way Villa have kind of fallen off quietly this season. There's a lot of reason to be optimistic next season for us as a City fan, knowing that you have a club that has the funds, has the ambition, and has just shown in January that we can do some damn good business as well.
Oh man, and we'll get to a little bit of transfer window later because I'm very interested in a couple of players and getting your thoughts on the situation. But what is something you think is underrated about football?
I'd go to the Newcastle game. I'd go to Nico Gonzalez, and I'd say it's players that can smell danger. Players that can smell danger. That would be it. The amount of times I've seen, I've put a GIF up just a minute